welcome here for another episode of Disgruntled. I wanted to take a second here and just say thank you. I want to say thank you for joining us again. If you are a person that watches with any kind of regularity, I want to say thank you. Also, if you haven't, please drop us a like and a subscribe. Definitely a like every time you watch. It really helps out the channel. We have some big plans here at 3 Clicks Media about what we're going to do with this platform. And we're kind of learning as we go, but we gotta build it. We gotta grow. And so every one of those likes, every one of those subscribes really helps us out. Please share any of this content. If you find any of it helpful or interesting, we hope that you do. We really like being here. To be quite honest, a lot of this is, it's a little therapeutic for us also to be able to sit here in this studio and talk to you all. Sometimes, admittedly, it's a little bit easier to talk about some things when all you got to do is look at a camera instead of look out over a crowd of people. So it helps a little bit, helps us out a little bit. Hopefully it helps out the community a little bit. At least that's the goal. That's what we're trying to do here. And so, as I said, please just help us out any way you can. We really appreciate it. I've recently got into a little bit of research and a little bit of interest into researching this whole idea of MDMA for PTSD treatment. Not only just for veterans, but there seems to be a lot of research going on for first responders, police, fire, paramedics, things of that nature as well. And I got to say, at first, I was a little skeptical. The idea that the government would approve giving a bunch of veterans a bunch of Molly or a bunch of ecstasy to help deal with their mental health issues was a little far-fetched to me until I started to do some research. And it became very clear pretty quickly that this research and the medications that they're using, although our MDMA are very controlled, the therapy sessions are very controlled. And it's not like you go to a therapist or a doctor and they write you a prescription and you take home this 30, 60, or 90-day supply of MDMA to use at your discretion. It's very controlled and it's you're watched over, you're supervised. And so that made me feel a little bit better about it, so I kept digging a little more to try to find out what some of the benefits were. And so I found this video that was done. It was done a few months ago, and it was done by a news outlet called The Hill. They seem to have a pretty legit following, and a lot of their stuff is usually pretty interesting. I didn't do any fact checking on this, but I did watch many different videos. I did read many different articles from many different sources, and they all kind of say the same thing. But what I didn't want to do is make this one big long video of me playing somebody else's video. So I found one that was, about 7 or 8 minutes. And I thought that we would play it and do kind of a little reaction to it. And then I would give you my thoughts after. Because it is quite interesting. In a time where we have many things going on, clearly. But in a time in the veteran community where we still see a lot of self-sabotage, we still see a lot of suicide, we still see a lot of negative things happening in the lives of veterans, and it quite admittedly, a lot of it sometimes is self-induced. Not because veterans want to suffer, or not because they want to be anything other than comfortable, a lot of folks are just stuck. Is kind of what I've been learning, and with the idea that this is all accurate and true. And so, of course, I have more research to do, but I was hoping that in talking about this on the show, maybe there's some other people out there that also know a little bit about it, and we can start this discussion. Because where it becomes interesting to me is that the United States government has been fighting this war on veteran suicide for a very long time. They've pushed millions and millions, if not billions of dollars at this problem. And even still today, we're losing way more soldiers to their own hands than we did in combat. And so just imagine that. Like that's a sobering number. It's a sobering statistic. I shouldn't say number because I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I do remember reading them, but I'm not 1,000% sure that I remember them, and so I don't want to give them out. But I do recall them saying in writing, the number of men and women that we lose to suicide at their own hands is more than what we were losing in combat when our nation was fighting the longest war in our country's history. And our government has been trying to combat this for years. Some might even say that this has been an issue way longer than we even can begin to fathom. You know, I think about PTSD. During the Civil War, they would just send soldiers home that were clearly having mental breaks. They'd fight their battles, they'd do whatever they do. Those guys that weren't able to get past it or put it aside to deal with later, like we've talked about before, they were just sent home because they were combat ineffective. And so if you as a soldier cannot be the type of person that can, and I shouldn't have said forget about it. That's not what I wanted to say. And I shouldn't have said get past it, because that's not what I meant. But if you're not the type of person that can table it until later and deal with it later, and then we all know that we don't ever get to it later and keep fighting, well, then you're not combat effective. And so back then, the idea was, well, we're just going to have to send Stan home. Send him home to his family. Which probably wasn't a bad thing. I mean, it's already bad enough that they were having the issues they were having. But instead of putting them in some hospital somewhere, they send them home. And so maybe that brought some of these guys some comfort, or maybe it turned out to be a disaster. But they called it soldier's heart back then. Even the Revolutionary War, I believe all the way up into the beginning of World War I. And then we got into in Vietnam, we got into shell shock. And now we effectively know it as PTSD, and I'm sure there's been other names for it that I'm just not aware of. And so it's been a thing for a long time. And we haven't figured it out yet. What we have figured out is that the mental capacity of a human being wasn't designed, and depending on what you believe and who you believe in, the creator and whoever that is for you in particular didn't design the mental mind and the mental psyche for being able to do this. It wasn't designed to take human life and keep trudging on. Even when these people are your sworn mortal enemies. It wasn't designed for that. And so, anyway, I'm getting off into the weeds. So let's watch this video quick, and then we'll discuss it as we go. Okay, here we go. And this poor lady, sorry about that, ma'am.
The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has been reviewing MDMA along with therapy as treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder. MDMA-assisted therapy is on track for federal approval in 2024. And with more than 660,000 veterans under VA care known to suffer from PTSD, this approval can't come soon enough.
Privately funded research has demonstrated clear, positive results in treating previously untreatable PTSD with little or no risk to patients. This includes studies in cooperation with the VA for existence at the Bronx VA Hospital. Let me be clear, these trials are conducted with full FDA approval under medical supervision and in a safe clinical environment.
Joining us now is Juliana Mercer, a 16-year Marine Corps veteran who served in both Iraq and Afghanistan. Juliana is now the Director of Veteran Advocacy and Public Policy for Healing Breakthrough, a nonprofit helping vets with PTSD. Juliana, first of all, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your service to this country. You've advocated for these treatments on Capitol Hill and have testified in front of Congress. Where are we at with FDA approval at this moment?
Lykos Therapeutics, formerly MAPS PBC, submitted a new drug application, or NDA, to the FDA this last December. The next milestone is 60 days later, which would be mid-February, and that is acceptance of the application. With the breakthrough therapy designation that was given to MDMA in 2017, Lykos has requested that the FDA grant priority review of the NDA. The FDA has 60 days to determine whether the NDA...
Keep in mind, folks, that this research has been going on since like late 2015 or something like that. It's been going on for almost 10 years. And this MAPS research place, that's now Lykos, I think she said, has been fighting this whole time to get them to listen and test and do the research and run the experiments and the test subjects and all this stuff to see that it'll work. It's taken them a long time, and I have a theory about this. We'll get back to it.
It will be accepted for review, and whether it will be a priority or standard review, so that's 6 months or 10 months respectively. If approved by the FDA, the DEA would then be required to reschedule MDMA, making it available for prescription medical use.
So that's moving pretty fast. I mean, 6 to 10 months. But first, walk us through MDMA specifically, and why is it so effective in treating PTSD, anxiety, and depression?
Here we go.
Yeah, so MDMA causes a chemical reaction in the brain. For somebody that has post-traumatic stress disorder, they're stuck in their trauma response, whether it's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And MDMA goes in, it's kind of like a switch. It flips that switch off so that you're no longer stuck in that trauma response. And once that switch is off, you're able to confront your trauma without having that trigger. And you're able to work with a therapist to get to the root cause of the problem and sort through the trauma that you're dealing with.
So you're a veteran yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about?
So that part's important. So what this does is allows the individual to get through the process of the trauma, is how I understood it. So when you go through a traumatic experience, you of course have that fight or flight moment. There was freeze and fawn as well. But I know more about the fight or flight. And so the trauma, they say, doesn't allow you to work through that process fully. And so what she was saying is that the medication, the therapy, allows you to essentially complete that process. And for some people, it's to go back into whatever the trauma was, or just before, or just after. It kind of just depends on the person and where their mind and brain takes it once these leading questions from the therapist that is there with you while you go through this therapy. They kind of ask you questions to try to lead you through a path, if that makes sense.
About your own personal experience with your treatments?
Yeah, so I found myself in a place with no purpose and came across a nonprofit called Heroic Hearts Project. They're a nonprofit that takes veterans outside of the country to get psychedelic therapy in places where it's not illegal. I was able to receive psychedelic assisted therapy and overnight almost complete healing of 20 years of collected trauma and grief. And that was the answer that I was looking for my veteran brothers and sisters. And I felt like I needed to get this into as many hands of veterans as possible. And that's how I started advocating for these therapies, and am now focused on getting MDMA assisted therapy into the VA system.
These therapies sound like they would certainly be a game changer, as they were for you. But I think
now, this is a very noble cause, right? Getting MDMA assisted therapy into the VA system would be awesome. If it works the way that they are saying that it works, and so many people are having success from it, why do they fight it? I wonder if it's similar to, because like for a long time, the VA didn't allow chiropractic, right? You had to basically get on your knees and grab the doctor's pant leg and beg and beg and plead and beg to go see a chiropractor if you needed it. And so it took them forever to agree. And I think now, even here in Minneapolis, I could be wrong because I haven't had the opportunity to go to them, but I think there's only like 2 or 3 chiropractors in the Minneapolis VA system, and there's thousands of veterans, and I'm sure all of them would love to see a chiropractor. Any of them that have any kind of skeletal issues going on, it'd be fantastic to go see a chiropractor. And so what I've been told is that, like, for example, the VA uses chiropractic as a more of an emergency treatment, not like a maintenance treatment. Let's continue.
when some people hear the term psychedelics or MDMA, they think of ecstasy or Molly.
Yep, so did I.
But those things are absolutely not the same. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so MDMA, what will be prescribed in the hospital setting is a pharmaceutical. Ecstasy and Molly are street drugs. So they do contain a form of MDMA, but they are often cut with other substances. So that makes them not clean and not a pure version of MDMA.
And how concerned are you about the cost and access for this new treatment if it's ultimately approved?
Cost, here we go.
So there is concern. We want everyone to have access to this, which is why we think it's so important to focus on getting this treatment inside of the VA system. Veterans will be able to access it for free under their care at the VA. And outside in the community, we're looking at pretty high costs and it not being accessible to all. So I think that the VA will be a model for other healthcare systems to be able to provide this type of therapy, and also hopefully down the line be able to implement it into insurance coverage.
You know, we've talked about how the
Here it is. There it is. That's the smoking gun right there. This is another example. And so this may be a good thing. It may turn out to be a positive change or a positive implementation. But this is yet another example of an issue that the VA is going to try on veterans first and then put out to the rest of the population. And I applaud this young lady for her efforts, and I applaud this young lady for her ambition. But history shows us that the VA does not have a very good track record of allowing anything new, any kind of treatment, any kind of drug, any kind of equipment, any kind of therapy. Nothing new comes that easy. And certainly not for free. If it is something that is way too expensive to be on the open market for the general populace, I don't know that it's going to be readily available and free to veterans. It would be great if it was. That would be fantastic. And maybe I'll have to eat crow on this one. But the idea that the VA or the federal government as a whole is going to agree to dope up a bunch of veterans with MDMA, even though it's very well controlled, it's not street drug forms of MDMA. I mean, I agree with what they're saying. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. And hopefully I'm wrong. I would love it if I'm wrong about this one. Anyway, let's continue. Sorry to interrupt you, ma'am. I'm very sorry.
This will be a game changer and how this could be approved in a matter of months to a year. But how urgent is the need for the Veterans Administration to embrace MDMA as a treatment method for our veterans?
It's extremely urgent. We are losing more veterans
Correct.
every year here at home than we did in the combined 20 years of
She's right.
combat on the global war on terrorism. That's 6,000 veterans every
There you
year
go.
here on American soil. We've been trying desperately to find solutions.
Folks, 6,000 veterans a year. We're losing 6,000 heroes. And maybe I shouldn't even call it because I don't like being called a hero. We're losing 6,000 men and women that made the decision to serve this country, to secure its borders, protect its freedom, its democracy, and went through a whole lot of bullshit only to come home and take their own lives. Explain that. Explain that. Men and women who should have been proud of the work that they did, the service that they gave to this country, the service that they gave to their community, to their neighbors, to their family, to their children. They should have been proud. Instead, Something got in the way of that pride. And who knows what that is for everybody. And I'm not saying that it's anybody's fault. All I'm saying is that it's a damn tragedy that these folks make it through hell. They go to hell and back. And then when they get home from hell, they put themselves right back in it forever. I don't know. It would seem to me that there's something amiss. There's something wrong. And this is the perfect topic to discuss all that. Because if there is a treatment form out there, then why would anybody say no? I watched another guy, I forget his name, but he's a producer or something over at Vice Media. If you've never watched a Vice special or documentary or anything, they do an amazing job. They do really good work. I love all of their stuff. Not a sponsor, by the way, but they do great work. But one of their guys, who's been a war correspondent for many years or was, he did some MDMA treatment for PTSD because he'd been in a war zone for, at that point, 18 years of his life. And he was able to talk about how bored he was in combat. And he wasn't even fighting. He was just, him and the camera guy were following soldiers around. And not only American soldiers, they would embed with whoever would have them all around the world. It's too much. And as we talked about before, they've been fighting this. They've been trying to find an answer for this for years. What the hell are they doing? What the hell are they doing with millions of dollars? What are the answers? The easy answer is, well, put a stop to war. Well, that's not an easy answer. War's been being fought on this planet since before Jesus was here. And we can hope and dream and wish for world peace all we want. It's never going to happen. So what else are we gonna try? And maybe that is a whole nother show. It's a whole nother topic. It's a whole nother discussion. But why do we find it so difficult? Why is it so hard? And I don't know the answer to that. But it seems like some of these people have figured some of this shit out. Let's finish this up here.
Solutions to the PTSD and suicide epidemic, and we've gotten nowhere because that number of 6,000 per year has not changed since 2005. And we have a solution that is 71% effective in eliminating the PTSD diagnosis, and we have to get access to our veterans as soon as it's FDA approved so that we can start saving veteran lives.
So moving forward, do you think this could pave the way for other psychedelic substances to treat conditions outside of PTSD, anxiety, and depression?
Absolutely. MDMA is the tip of the spear, and it's not a classic psychedelic, but there are close to 500 different psychedelic compounds that are currently being studied in some form of the FDA process. And they're looking at things like Alzheimer's, eating disorders, depressive disorders, and they're also looking at cluster headaches and pain management. So there's a lot of potential uses for these compounds, and I think MDMA is paving the way for figuring out how to not only implement but be open to these novel treatments.
Juliana, you're really doing great work, and I hope this, we'll see some progress in this world, in this universe. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, I'm going to tell you what, folks. Here's my first thought. If you have money in the stock market or crypto or something that you have and you're able to shuffle around or something, do some research and find a couple of these companies that are working on this, because when and if this takes off, it's going to be huge, I would imagine. We all know that the cannabis game has been a extraordinary moneymaker, but also it's been an extreme success for people. People with pain, people with sleep issues, people with Parkinson's disease, all kinds of stuff. And so it really makes me think, okay, here we go, off in the weeds, because I have a thought here. It really makes me wonder if somebody all along has known that some of these drugs could have been beneficial to people. And there was some other shenanigans going on. And it was made illegal so that other pharmaceuticals or other forms of therapy or treatment could have been approved and put into place to line pockets or something. This is my tinfoil hat moment of the show, I guess. I mean, does anybody really expect us to believe that in 2024 that science is just now, scientists and the science world is just now figuring out that MDMA could do wonders for people that have experienced trauma, and not just once or twice, but many, many instances of trauma, or even if it was just once or twice. You listen to some people or read what other people's experiences, and it almost seems like when they're done with the therapy, of course you don't forget the trauma, but it's like an afterthought, right? It doesn't control your life. It doesn't stick with you from day to day. You don't think about it when you wake up or when you're at lunch or at night, or it doesn't enter your mind in negative ways. And that's the way they make it sound anyway. And so one of the interesting things that they talked about here is when this Juliana lady, the guest on this news broadcast, was talking about the different levels of trauma, the fight and flight and the freeze, and I forget what the last one was. And that the MDMA allows you to essentially complete this process of the trauma and give you some kind of closure possibly, or the ability to see it a different way and think about things a different way. And so that resonated with me because I know people that, of course, have post-traumatic stress. And I've thought sometimes, hey man, that you're stuck in this trauma. Like he's stuck in this area and just can't get past it. And so like there's I think in my experience there's a lot of the freeze going on where you just kind of freeze where you're at and you're pissed off about it. You have your good days. And then you kind of learn how to just kind of get on with life. You learn how to put on a show and make everything seem okay. But it really never leaves you. And it kind of always infiltrates your mind. And then as you age and get a little bit older, you tend to just like lose interest in things that you used to love. And of course, when you do these PTSD assessments, they ask you, well, have you lost interest in things you used to once enjoy? Well, absolutely. But like one for me that I experienced personally, I think, is like just this general numbness. This general numbness to what's going on around you. And it can be great things going on, negative, indifferent stuff. It doesn't matter. Nothing really gets you super excited. Nothing really gets you super pissed off. Although I will admit that lately, around here in Minnesota, we have two seasons here in Minnesota. We have winter and we have construction. And we are in full swing of construction season. And that is maddening. Because not only is everything under construction, number one, but number two, it seems like everybody around here forgets how to drive when construction is going on, but construction is always going on. So anyway, but I think part of my being stuck in my trauma maybe is the idea that I'm really numb to everything. And I think if I were to have my wife on here, she'd be able to tell you for sure. There's where are we going for dinner? Well, I don't care. Like we'll plan a afternoon to get on our motorcycles and go for a cool ride, maybe grab lunch or dinner or, stop and just see something cool or just go for a ride and just kind of release the bullshit in your mind. Well, where do you want to ride to? I don't care. Because the truth is I could get on my motorcycle and I could ride around the block for 4 hours. I'm still riding. Not as fun, but we could do it. I don't really have an opinion. There isn't very many things that I have an opinion about. I mean, if you look at me, clearly I don't miss a meal. So anywhere we go to eat, I'll find something. And so maybe, I don't know if that's part of post-traumatic stress symptoms, but it's not just that. There's a lot of other things. She just told me recently that she can see it every day. And I didn't ask questions. Babe, I didn't ask questions. Just kind of took it for what it was worth. But if these are things that can help out the men and women that serve this, not only that, but our police officers, our paramedics, our firefighters, if you think that veterans are the only professionals or the only career path, or the only ones that have traumatic things, you're sadly mistaken. Think about it. Most of the time, when a police officer is dealing with somebody, it's at a negative time in their life, or quite possibly the absolute worst day of their life. They're getting arrested for doing something stupid out of necessity or desperation. Somebody died, somebody got hurt, something's burning down. I mean, there's just a whole lot of negativity surrounding the first responders industry as a whole. And of course, there's very positive things happening too, and they get to be heroes when need be. But I would say that majority of their time is spent with people who are quite possibly having the worst day of their lives. And violence. And hatred. Do you think that anybody decides to be a police officer with the idea that every day they go to work, they're going to be told multiple times how much somebody hates them, that they're a piece of shit, or that they get attacked, they get assaulted, they get shot at, they get beat up, they get stabbed with a needle, something. They're trying to apprehend a person and crash a squad car and they get hurt, or somebody, God forbid, somebody else gets hurt. Or they perform the duties of their job and the person that they're arresting gets hurt somehow. And then before you know it, they're on the news. Oh, I got something in my eye. Holy crap. And before you know it, they're on the news. And there's 5,000 people at their house destroying their shit. How many people sign up for that? How many people decide to go after a career to put a badge on their chest and not know every day whether or not they're going to come home the same way they left? And some would argue that you never come home the same way you left. There's always something that happens that just changes who you are just a little bit. That one interaction or that one vision of tragedy. That one house you go into that is just disgusting and gross, and there's little babies in there with diapers that have not been changed in 4 or 5 days, and it stinks to high heaven, and there's dog crap on the floor, and there's fast food wrappers everywhere, and the mom is on the couch passed out with a heroin needle in her arm, and here this baby lies in a car seat, hungry, dirty, shitty and pissy. And she couldn't give 2 shits about it because she got her fix. Changes you. But that's what they signed up for. They knew that going in. They know what the cost is. Same with soldiers. Same with firefighters. Do you think that when these men and women signed up to be firefighters, they were excited to go into a burning building and find burnt up people dead? Probably not. But they do it because they're heroes. And so if this type of thing can help them to process that and not forget about it, but be able to process it and deal with it in a healthy way, to be able to have it be a part of who they are, but not dominate their lives and their thoughts and their relationships and their just overall being. Why would anybody say no? I don't know, I guess that's a question for somebody that's not me, because I don't have the power to do any of that. I would like to think that if there's overwhelming evidence that this stuff is good for the people that it's intended for, that it'll be made available. And I think it's a great idea that it's done under supervision and that it's controlled And then it's more of it almost seems like more of this euphoric guided tour through the traumatic halls of your life. And you're able to have an opportunity to hopefully patch some of that up. I don't know about you, but I'm going to kind of keep tabs on it, and see where it goes. Because I think that this is something that we should be assuming that everything they say is accurate and correct. I think we should be keeping tabs on it. I think that we should make this stuff an option for people that want to try it out. Anyway, I think that that's all the time that we have for the day. Sorry, we kind of got a little off into the weeds at the end there, but man, I'll tell you what. Whenever you're presented with a solution or a potential fix to a problem, and people say, no, I don't think it's confusing to me. If there's research that shows that it's helpful, and you can talk to people that have had such treatment or therapy or whatever you want to call it, why would we say no? What are we scared of? What's the worst thing that can happen? And I guess I'm not trying to say that we make it available to the whole country as a test subject, but why would we not further the research? Why would we not try some more trial groups? Why would we not? And maybe they are. But this video we watched from the Hill was only a few months ago. So, and Juliana said that she had to leave the country to get her treatment. So hopefully they've come a little further, and it continues to make steps forward. That would be fantastic to hear. So anyway, folks, thank you for joining us. I apologize. We got a little long. We got almost to 50 minutes today, and I hate keeping people that long. It gets long, and hopefully it doesn't get boring, but sometimes maybe it does. And so for that, I apologize. But again, thank you for being here. Drop us that like and subscribe down there if you don't mind. We'd really appreciate it. We'll see you next week. Have a great evening. Good night.